YouTube. In this video, I'm going to be doing the short version of, or the condensed version of my review of the RX 480. So I noticed how long that video was. So again, this is going to be a consumer review. So it's one that I actually went out to Microcenter on the day of release and purchased the card. And it sold out really fast in the day it released. So they've sold a ton of these. Really successful card. So it's going to be my opinion on it based off of the results of my testing. Because it was highly requested. I did do an unboxing video and a lot of people watched that video and they all wanted to see a review from me on it. So this is going to be some gaming benchmarks. This is a gaming review, so you're not going to see Unigine, you're not going to see Firestrike in here. It's just going to be real world average person who just buys the card, takes it out, plugs it in the computer, and then starts playing some games. And that's basically what it is. So the test setup that I'm using is a, well, it's here. It's the FX8350 overclocked to 4.7 with a Crosshair 5 Formula Z, 16 gigs of memory, XFX power, 850 watt power supply. So that's Seasonic power supply. Do note that it is the reference card being tested, and it is being compared to factory overclocked custom AIB SKUs. So this gives you an idea of an average consumer buying just a graphics card from the store or from Newegg or somewhere, and just plugging it in and testing it. No overclocking results for this. Tested cards are the RX 480, so I paid $249. This is the one with the back plate from XFX with slightly factory overclock of 1288 megahertz. I'm going to pit it against my MSI GTX 970, which cost $349 at the time of purchase. My EVGA GTX 960, which was $229. My Sapphire R9 Fury, which was $545, gives you an idea of what it's like to go into Enthusiast territory there. In terms of that price, that's really expensive. Then the PowerColor R9 290X. This was a previous performance crown from AMD when it released, which eventually was overthrown by the 780 Ti back in the day. But now this card is better than the 780 Ti. Due to just how much horsepower it had to begin with. Then we have the Asus Matrix Platinum 7970. This is the gigahertz edition one, so that was $429. It was a very strong graphics card back in the day. Its rivals were the GTX 680 and the GTX 770. Then we have the Sapphire HD 7850, so that's the small Pitcairn. I call it the PS4 because that's exactly what the PS4 uses. And then we have the HD 7870, and those are the prices. So this is what all pictures shown are pictures of the actual SKU that I have. So this is what my MSI 970 looks like. It has the backplate, it's green and black. I think that just matches NVIDIA color scheme a whole lot better than the red and black, which would probably be for the 390. Then we have the EVGA GTX 960. This is the $230 one, GM206. This is the little brother of the 970. Then we have the Pitcairn XT. So this card was the upper mainstream back in the day when it was new. Also rebranded as the R9 270X. And I think it's currently discontinued. I don't think you can get this brand new anywhere anymore. But this picture is the 7871. Then we have the PS4 in PC form, also known as Pitcairn Pro. Known as many names, it's HD 7850. The R9 270, and currently it is still live. It is the R7 370. I think it's like a $150 card or something. Similar to the GTX 950. So this is what I paid when it was new back in the day for Guild Wars 2 and stuff like that. That was around 2012. Then we have Tahiti, the Tahiti XT, also known as the HD 7970, and then it later became the R9 280X. This card is very similar to the 380X, which is actually a newer, better, more refined architecture. It's the Tonga, but this one is the old Tahiti, which is a very popular graphics card. This card was the best graphics card when it came out, and then the 680 came out, and then So then we have the R9 290X. This is the one I have, the PowerColor PCS Plus. I paid $370 for it. Back when Maxwell just came out, the 290X fell in price, so I picked it up at that point. And then finally we have the Enthusiast class 1080p performance, which is at this point really $500 is the max you go for 1080p. If you wanted to get something more, like a 980 Ti, a 1070, which is actually now similar to the same price, that's kind of the top. Like anything above that price point, you're looking at 1440p. So this is my R9 Fury, my favorite graphics card I've ever purchased. So it's really, really quiet. It's very nice. It does not generate that much heat. Then we have the 249 RX 480, of course. So just to give an idea of what retail prices look like in the US at least, so they're all sold out currently at Microcenter, but this is what you're looking at. So comparing it to the GTX 960, the R9 480X is significantly faster than the GTX 960, and it's similarly priced. So it's in this tier of price point, but it's way faster. In some cases, up to 70% faster. So now we compare to the 970. So this is from the next tier. The prices have dropped on the 970, as you see here. They've gotten a little bit cheaper. But because of all the mind share, because of the reputation of the 970, it still maintains its higher price. And then we have the 390, which is very similar in performance to the 970 and the 480, and it fell in price, you can see here. And then the 390X even fell in price as well, dramatically, actually, like a $100 drop, which is pretty significant. So for projected average price comparison, you can see on the slide here, the average over the lifetime of this card will probably be priced around, I project, $230. That's just from comparing the older cards, how their average price points over time played out. And next we have our gaming benchmarks. So starting off, we're going to do some benchmarking for the MMO. I did Heavensward Final Fantasy XIV. This is probably one of the most popular, if not the best, actual modern MMO out there right now that can actually stress a GPU. So as you can see, the results are very good. This game does use NVIDIA's GameWorks HBAO+, so it does give Maxwell cards a slight performance advantage. You can see the 970 does beat out the RX 480 by a sizable margin. But if you compare, the results are still relatively good for an AMD card on an NVIDIA GameWorks game with everything maxed out. And again, when you look at the price, 480 to the GTX 960, just much better price to performance there in comparison, direct price comparison. Next we have Tomb Raider 2013. These are results I got. Unfortunately, I do not have Rise of the Tomb Raider, so I couldn't test that one. I'll get that game when it's, I guess, on sale at some point. But these are results I got. Very good for a $250 card, scoring an average of 88 FPS compared to the older 290X, and the GTX 970 is just right up there with it, really close. But again, it just completely annihilates the 960 if you compare it in the same to the card in the same price tier, and as well as even the older AMD stuff like 280X, 380X is probably similar to the 280X, slightly better or worse depending on the game, but much better performance by the 480 here. Then we've got BioShock Infinite. This game is not that hard, not too taxing. You can see like a lot of the older cards are averaging pretty nice frame rates here. Even the old 7970 is able to get 77 on max. This depth of field, everything turned up. But yeah, very good performance over 90 FPS. Very solid for a $200 card. Then we have Metro Last Light, another FPS single-player game that is vendor neutral, I would say. It is not really, it doesn't favor NVIDIA or AMD, and the results here kind of speak for themselves. You can see that these three cards that have similar performance are all very close, and then once again, the RX 480 does raise the bar for performance at the $200 price range significantly. We're seeing like a difference of 21, 22, 23 FPS. And then we have the Talos Principle. So this is just a game that I have that's another single-player game. It's a puzzle solver game. It's really fun. And you can see Talos Principle is interesting to point out that it does scale very well with memory bandwidth, which explains why the R9 290X is able to beat the 480, because it does have that big 512-bit memory bus. So that higher memory bandwidth does come into play here. But it does very similar to the 970, if not better, at this game, which again is a very neutral game in terms of driver support. And And then lastly, we have Hitman Absolution. This is currently the only DirectX 12 game that I have. But here, very good results. 75 FPS in both the X11 and 12. Very close with the 290X, which is a much higher wattage card and much better performance than the 970. And of course, the 960, way better than 960. So for power consumption, this power consumption number was taken from the wall using just like a cheap watt meter that I got from Fry's Electronics. This is with Vsync off. If you turn Vsync on, or if you use frame limiters, or even like the Riva tuner or something like that, you're going to get even lower power consumption across the board, no matter which graphics card you're using. But the results are not surprising. I kind of expected this. The GTX 970 barely edges out the 480, but I would consider it a tie. Overall, the GTX 970 is rated at 145 watt TDP. The RX 480 is 150 watt TDP, so you'd expect it to be just ever so slightly above that when you do a direct comparison between them. But overall, these are very good numbers for the new Polaris card, much better than the 290X for equal or better performance in most situations. In conclusion, I would say that the RX 480 is the current new king of 1080p gaming. It's really good. For the stock reference cooler, it is relatively quiet for a blower cell cooler. I was actually surprised by how quiet it was. And if you're like me and you have your case on the floor, on a carpeted floor, then it probably won't be an issue running it at stock. Temperatures are around 80 degrees Celsius. Is about the average I saw, and that's really good for a blower cooler with the noise profile that it has. I do not recommend overclocking it though, because the card is very power limited, at least the reference card. So I did put an image of the custom AIB from Sapphire, which we'll be releasing. I think it's going to be in a couple of weeks from now, like maybe 2 weeks, shorter or more, depending. But this is the card that you'd want to get if you were looking to overclock one of these. But overall, the reference card is a very good value for money at the time of release, and I think it is safe to say that it is currently the new king of 1080p gaming in terms of the price to performance ratio. So anyway, guys, that was my review of the RX 480. Hope you guys enjoyed that video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks.